good morning, and welcome to another edition of Think and Grow Rich. My name is Dr. Peter A. James, and I want to welcome you today to you being persistent. You see, Napoleon Hill says that the majority of people are ready to throw their aims and purposes overboard and give up at the first sign of opposition or misfortune. Does that sound like you? Does that sound like something that you do when faced with roadblocks, obstacles, and hurdles? Because you do know that roadblocks, obstacles, and hurdles are just a part of our existence. They're a part of our lives, our careers, our business. So today we're going to dive on into this new principle. Actually, not even a new principle. This next principle, the principle of persistence. And we are not alone today. We have a phenomenal guest, and we will bring her out in just a little bit. But before we do, as you always know, folks, I am not alone today. Let's start out by bringing the leadership strategist, Galen Bingham. Good morning to you, sir. How are you doing early on another Saturday morning?
Good morning. Good morning. Excited to be here. Welcome back, Dr. Peter.
It's
We
good to be
missed you
back, my
past
friend.
couple weeks.
It's good to be
Uh,
back.
this is a really, really important principle because I really like the way the author discusses it. It said he talks about how all of the principles are really, really important to understand, but they can really only be mastered once you apply the principle of persistence.
Mm.
Persistence, I like to say that the only thing I know for sure is that no plan will go according to plan. You've got to have persistence in order to achieve anything of significance, whether it's accumulating wealth, whether it's accomplishing a career goal, whether it's starting a business. No plan will go according to plan. So I can't wait to get into this principle and to have this conversation with our guest.
Awesome. It is going to be a phenomenal conversation today there, Galen. I truly agree with you. But let's bring out the master wealth builder who knows something about being persistent as well. Good morning to you, Ann McNeil. How are you doing today?
I am awesome. I have a new name. It's Awesome Ann. But Awesome Ann has a question today. That's my other. And that question is for each of you that's listening, do you have that silent power to carry on in the face of all odds and opposition and also success? And we know that power to be persistent. So I cannot wait to get this party started today. Excited. But then
It's
again,
gonna
I'm always excited though.
it's
So
gonna be a great party today there, Miss Awesome Ann. It's good
yeah.
to have you talking about that for sure. But you know, this persistence thing is something that we sometimes overlook, that we sometimes don't realize how persistent we are not being, right? It's a very, very important one. And I wonder as we unpack this conversation, if we can identify ways that we can continue to be more persistent. What are some strategies to be able to do so? So I'm looking forward to unpacking this and hearing from all of my colleagues here, but also, of course, our special guest who's joining us this morning. So folks, let me introduce our special guest. Dr. Katherine E. James is passionate about self-love and inspires others to become their best selves. With a PhD in educational psychology from Walden University, she taught at Spring Arbor University, Ashland Theological Seminary, and Wayne County Community College District. After 36 years of teaching, she retired in 2019 to focus on promoting love through her company, Dr. Katherine E. James, PLLC, as a self-love coach and soul midwife. An associate pastor of Shiloh Deliverance Church International for over 30 years. She was named the American Mental Health Counselors Association's 2022 Counselor of the Year. And she has authored several books, the Self-Love, a gift you give yourself, and the Amazon International bestseller, Freedom is Our Birthright. She is also hosting the TV show For the Love of It and the Facebook Live series Y5 AM Ooh, that should be a good watch for sure. Married for 40 years. Listen, I need to learn how to do that right there. She has one son and a daughter in love. Good morning to you, Dr. James. You have such a special name at that as well. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Dr. James. I am doing well. I'm doing well. Good morning to Ann and Galen. So wonderful to be here. Thank you, thank you, thank you for having me this morning.
It is so phenomenal to have you with us this morning, and I'm excited to dive on into this persistence conversation, but also excited to hear a little bit about your journey and what you have learned about persistence from your own journey, maybe the persistence or the lack thereof. So we will definitely dive on in really quickly before we go back to the video that we have coming up pretty soon. Introduce yourself to the audience from what you would like them to know about you as Katherine.
Yeah, yeah. I have developed into living this life that's from the foundation of love.
Mhm.
Everything that I do, it is for us to love ourselves well enough to live out our soul's purpose. So all of my endeavors are towards that, whether I'm talking about my personal life, my professional life, just my family life. It is to help, and I say Papa's beloved. I help all in the universe to love themselves well enough to believe that they are here for a unique purpose. And that's what I do everywhere I go, whether it's a stranger on the corner or on this platform. In some way or another, I'm going to talk about the subject of love.
Hmm. We are excited to dive on into the conversation about love there. But before we do that, we want to go back and provide our audience a little bit of overview of this Think and Grow Rich book by Napoleon Hill. And I'm going to bring you on in. We have a video that we're going to get ready to show to our audience. But Ann, do you mind teeing that up for our audience so that they can kind of get a good grasp of this video and what it's going to be, how it might digest for them? As soon as she finds her unmute button, she will be able to do that.
Of course, I was talking because I am always excited to share. I just have to restrain myself from actually getting ahead of the video and walking through all of the principles and allow the video to do a much better job than I could ever do. If you are struggling in any area of your business and or your life, and you are really looking for connecting links, sometimes Galen, Peter, Katherine, sometimes we have one piece of the puzzle. We may have faith, or we may have desire, or we may have persistence, but it's not until we connect all of the links of the chain together to understand these 13 principles. So with that, let's play this video.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the Mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
All righty, folks, those were the 13 principles from Napoleon Hill. If you have never had the opportunity to dive on into Think and Grow Rich, the book that almost every successful individual, business person has touched, has perused in order to understand how they can be successful. I encourage you to be able to do that sooner rather than later. Definitely check out Amazon. You can also place a link in the chat or on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, if you are not on YouTube, you need to be right now. And if you are on YouTube, you need to give this show a thumbs up because we're going to dive today into this persistence chapter and ask Dr. James what persistence has looked like for her career, for her life. And so thank you so much for joining us. So Dr. James, I'm going to bring you back out. I'm going to lead off this discussion if you don't mind. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your history, your background, where you're from, and then maybe even finish it off with how persistence has played a little bit into your life?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm gonna go from the high level down. So when I look at myself today, it blows my mind. So if we just talk academically, I've got 5 degrees. I have a career that I've retired from, 36 years of working in education, 20 years of
Looks like we may have lost her a little bit there, Dr. James. It looks like your connection may be a little bit slow. I was very interested to hear about her background. And boy, she started off talking about those degrees. And take it from me, I know you need a little bit of persistence to get even just one degree. So good stuff. We're going to wait for her to come back through in just a little bit. Looks like she is frozen. Galen, I'm going to pull you into this conversation right away. As we wait for Dr. James to come back, I want to even go to you, Galen, really quickly and ask you what persistence may have looked like last week for Galen.
Yeah, it's and I say this a number of times that no plan will go according to plan. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a plan. You should have an idea of what you want to accomplish. You have to have a vision. You have to have an organized plan. But at the same time, you've got to be prepared to demonstrate to the universe that you're serious about this desire that you say that you have. And the universe is going to test you. They're going to put roadblocks in front of you at every step of the way to ensure that you're really, really serious. And that's where persistence comes in. I like the way the author puts it, that every person who's achieved any level of success or accumulated any level of wealth, they've done so by being persistent. Very few things happen the first time you do it. I had a conversation with one of my mentees just last night, and I explained the first time we do anything, we're terrible at it. The second time, we're just bad. We're not terrible anymore. We're just bad. And then the third time, we're just so-so. But if you don't persist, you will never get to any level of proficiency at anything that you're trying to accomplish.
It's funny you mentioned that because whatever you dive on into first, it feels like, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. I'm not good at it, or I'm failing at it. I'm messing it up overall. And it's so important to be able to course correct or stay the course for that matter. Continue to be persistent. But I love what you said. You mentioned this word right here, this desire word, right? And Napoleon Hill says in the chapter there, the starting point of all achievement is actually desire. So we have to keep this constantly in mind. Why? Again, to piggyback on Galen, weak desires bring weak results. Just as a small amount of fire makes a small amount of heat, and you find yourself lacking in persistence, this weakness may be remedied by building a stronger fire under your desires. And sometimes we have to take a step back and ask ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10, what does our will and desire look like for that goal, for that objective? Ann McNeil, I'm coming back full circle to you there, awesome Ann. And I would love to hear a little bit about what Ann McNeil, what persistence and maybe even desire looks like for Ann McNeil.
Well, you started off really with the crux of the question for each of us. And that question is surrounding our desire, because desire and persistence are so tightly tied together. You really have to question each one in determining success or failure. So for me, it is my desire that drives my persistence. And then it's my persistence that drives my desire. And I think that we have our guest back. Welcome back, Dr. James.
Thank you. I apologize for technology, right?
Absolutely. No problem at all, Dr. James. We are so glad to have you back.
Yeah.
I was hooked on all these degrees, and then you went away, and I was like, how in the world she have all these degrees? So do you mind giving us a little bit more of that background, that journey?
Yes. So, so the degrees, let's talk a little bit about that. I have a PhD in educational psychology. I have 2 masters, one in pastoral counseling, where I'm a licensed therapist, and the other one is in instructional design. And then I have a bachelor's in family life education and an associate's in associate of arts. But no one in my history has any of that. And I didn't see any of that. And my soul, though, in all of growing up in poverty and all those kinds of things, there was always something in me. And I came back into the perfect segue of you all talking about desire, because deep in my soul, it was always screaming, Kathy, there's more. There's more. There's more. I didn't know how to do more. I didn't have an example. I didn't have a bridge. I didn't have any of those things in my immediate circle. But as I was exposed to different things in life, because of growing up in poverty, I didn't have this. There was scarcity, what I learned in that was playing in the background of my mind. But my soul would supersede that and say, nope, there is more for you. And so every time I saw someone, I would hook onto their caboose and just imitate them. So persistence, my soul would never allow me to stay with what I was seeing. Right? It would never allow me to be limited to that. So there was this desire for more, and the persistence of every time there was someone else who I could believe, because there was something I could connect to, I would connect, I would hook, and I would just do what they did.
I like that. I like that. So what I heard from you a little bit about is surrounding yourself with the right individuals to hook onto. Like, I'm going to bring in someone I hook onto on a regular basis. Galen, what are your questions for Dr. James?
Yeah, I want to share something and have you help me with something that I share with my clients very often. Very often we can know something, but not be able to articulate what we know. Right? I've been married to the same woman for 29 years. But if you were to ask me why this particular woman, I know, but I can't really explain it. And a lot of times, if we can't explain it, we think that we don't know. And that's not true. That's just the part of the brain that controls knowing is not the same part of the brain that controls language. So my question to you is, tell me about a time when, and you start talking about this a little bit, when all you had was the faith that this thing was coming. You had no evidence. You just had faith that your faith would kick in. But you had no evidence, and you just decided to keep going because you had faith that your faith would kick in.
Yeah. So let's just talk about something more recent. There's so many stories to that. No, but I did have. Let me just talk about something more recent. So for 37 years, 37. I'm 61. So for 37 years, I was 100 pounds overweight. For 37 years, I tried everything. Like if they told me to eat tree bark, I would have eaten it. I tried every diet you think that there was, I tried it. And so I had no evidence of success. I had no evidence of being able to lose and keep weight off. But the persistence, like the faith, the willpower, the desire, the determination, I knew that it was possible for me to live at least 100 pounds less. And so I never stopped until 37 years of accumulated tries. 37 years of not accomplishing the task. Finally, I was able to come up with the right combination. So there was a knowing in my soul that this was possible for me. I didn't have the technical knowledge that I specifically need. But with every try, I gained a gem. With every try, I learned what didn't work. And then I learned what worked. So I would say with that, keep trying no matter what, and collect what works and discard what doesn't.
Wow, that's a great example. Clearly those degrees are those degrees are kicking in. Ann, I would love to hear from you. Any questions that you might have for Dr. James, and then also just kind of weigh in on, were there times, I'm sure there were times when all you had was faith that your faith would kick in, and that's what kept you going.
Listen, Galen, Dr. James, Peter James, I'm still on 37 years of accumulated tries. I get chills. Now, well, I don't even want to say what's your question, because just the idea of so many people listening to this podcast, and for those of you that are live on YouTube, please place your questions and comments in the chat. But Galen, listen, as she is speaking, I am going back and reminiscing. I don't have 37, but I have close to it. I have 30 years of tries. I'll call them tries. I'll say attempts to win a particular project at Miami International Airport. And finally, 35 years in, we won. And so when we think about this persistence principle, I go back to how I opened up, and that is, what is your silent power? For each of you listening, what is that silent power that just encourages and inspires and pulls you to continue to move forward? Because if you are able to tap into that, it's called persistence. It is called persistence. And I like to say, are you willing to persist with a spirit of excellence?
Yeah.
Because, you can be nonchalant about it, but it just takes so much longer. And wow, 37 years. And then you went on to say, a knowing in my soul, with every try, I gained a gem. Katherine, you are a gem, because that by itself, anybody listening to those words, we know in our soul that you are really the face of persistence. Really, really, really. One of my questions, though, to go to Galen's point, I love always asking two questions. One is, what was your first introduction to this book? And yes, and then, do you have a favorite book? It doesn't have to be this one, but those two questions. What is what was your first introduction to this book, Think and Grow Rich? And for those of you that's just starting to listen to this podcast or stumble on it, we are talking about the principle persistence with Dr. Katherine James, and we are speaking from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I like to say that because sometimes people just jump on and they're like, what are they talking about? Who is this? So my question, first one is, what was your first introduction to this book? And then what's your favorite book?
Yeah, thank you for those questions. First introduction to the book. So probably in 2000, actually probably very recently in 2019, probably in 2019 is when I was really introduced to the book. I was called off my job in 2019. Literally, I got a vision of something jumping off a cliff and then soaring. And I heard God say, "Oh, you got to leave here." I've been in my job 36 years. And he said, "I'm going to need you to start taking risk and breaking rules." That's what's taking risk and breaking rules. And I'm like, me? The person who likes rules, I like parameters, I like knowing, but you don't grow with that. And so in 2019, I walked away from very comfortable, knowing, very predictable, 36 years, to this whole world of personal development and entrepreneurship. And it was like being dropped in a foreign world. And so all of these things like Think and Grow Rich and The Secret and this and that and whatever, I was introduced and my mind was blown. And it was coming against like what I knew from I'm an associate pastor, had been in the church world forever. It was coming against it, but also aligning. And so my mind was blown and my world was blown. And I was like, what is this? But it felt right to my soul. So I was introduced to this whole new world. So that's how I was introduced. And it was so many more that came to me at that time. My favorite book, oh my God, there's so many. I think I get a book every day in the mail. And I also listen to them on Audible. So it's like whatever I get tangible, I also have it on Audible. Right now I am diving in again to The Secret of the Soul. That's what I'm diving in right now. But U Squared by Pritchard.
Pritchard. Yes, I have that book.
Right.
Awesome. It's small book, 37 pages.
Small. Yes. But so
only
powerful.
37 pages.
Only 37 pages. So
Yeah.
powerful. It's one of my favorites, but there are so many others that are my favorites. I love learning. I love books. I could just name off countless other of them, but that's one of them.
Awesome. All right, Peter.
Yeah, good stuff. And this persistence chapter really allows us to be able to unpack what it is we need to do. I love it because Napoleon Hill gives us the four necessary steps to persistence, the four simple steps. I'm going to read them really quickly, just for
Yeah.
those of you who have never perused through the book. Number one, and this is again, if you have a goal, and maybe the goal is a lofty goal that's going to take some time, and the journey may be a little bit long to get there. Hey, that's okay. We all have that in our lives. But Napoleon Hill tells us these four ways. Number one, a definite purpose backed by a burning desire for its fulfillment. We've been talking about this desire already. Number two, a definite plan expressed in continuous action. So it's not enough, as you see in number one, to have a desire, but then also, what's the plan? What's the strategy in order to get there? Are you following suit on that plan? Number three, a mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences. These include negative influences, suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances. We sometimes are our own worst enemy, number one, but sometimes we have those who are close to us. Sometimes we'll inject those negative suggestions, ideas that don't align with that desire, that don't align with that plan. Are you fully aware of who they might be? And sometimes, as I just even mentioned, it may be even in your own family. And then number four, of course, this is huge, a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage one to follow through with both the plan and the purpose. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Who are you aligning, have that alliance with in order to accomplish those goals, for sure. So, Catherine, I want to come back to you. Those are four specific areas that Napoleon Hill goes right on into, whether it's the desire, the plan, those negative influences that we need to stay away from, but also those alliances. What might a few of those look like in your life, if you might reflect on that a little bit?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Being clear about what I want,
Mm-hmm.
like being clear. One of my practices is getting up every morning, sitting and visualizing, literally using all senses. I see myself living in that way. What will I hear when it's like that? I have a vision that I go through, and that vision continues to develop. So when we understand about the brain doesn't know the difference if we're imagining something or if we're actually experiencing it. And we know that if someone's chasing us in a dream, when we wake up, our whole body is responding as if that thing actually happened. The brain doesn't know the difference. And so when we set our mind to a thing, then we position ourselves to actually live it out. So having the definite purpose, having that clearly defined,
Mm-hmm.
and so the plan, having the plan to that, making sure that every day I'm looking, what are my steps that take me closer? And I look at my steps and I make sure that I am living into that step. And then I have people in my life that have permission to speak the truth to me. That have permission. You're getting off. This doesn't align with what you said, and those kind of thing. So living transparent and authentic. Transparency, like who I am is who I am all the time. And so that's the thing. And then the idea that what we think about matters. Thoughts really are things. Nothing happens without a thought. And so I am very careful of what I see, of what I allow myself to hear, of what I engage. I don't engage frivolous conversations that are not life giving, that don't lead to the betterment of something. I absolutely will not engage it. Even if it's fun loving, if it's not life giving, if it comes at cost, I won't engage the conversation. I'll remove myself from it. And so those are the kinds of the ways that I lean into those principles.
Love that. I love that there, Catherine. Thank you so much for that. Galen, that was a great insight into what we need to steer clear from. And sometimes we can often see what that looks like, even on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis. We can see where the negative language is coming from, where the not so positive dialogue is stemming, and how do we stay clear, or do we just jump on in? A great insight right there. Thank you so much, Catherine. Galen, I want to pull back to you there, sir, and what are your questions?
Yeah. So, Catherine, again, I want to place something back to you and get your insight on this, because one of the things that I share with my clients is that we want to marry the objective but date the strategy. So get committed to the outcome, committed to what you want, but then be open to any strategy that might help you get to the outcome. That's hard to do, because the temptation is to marry a strategy, is to say, I want this and I want to have it this way and I want it to happen just like that. And it's almost like we're trying to give God instructions. What's been your, how do you guard against getting married to a strategy, getting married to exactly how you want it to happen? Although you're visualizing absolutely important, but you want to visualize the outcome, not necessarily the strategy. How do you guard against that?
Yeah. So I love what you said. Can you say that for me again?
Well,
Marry,
marry, marry the objective, but date the strategy.
date the strategy. Yeah, I love that. So how do you guard against getting stuck in the strategy that is now? For me, I remind myself of how many years I did the same thing the same way over and over again, and it didn't work. I remind myself of all of the cost of it not working. And then I ask myself, do I want to pay that again? Because you already learned that lesson. Like, do you want to pay that again? You don't. And so you remember, and not from a place of beating myself up, because we know what we know when we know it. So we give ourselves, we take ownership, but give ourselves grace. Because this 61-year-old lens, I didn't have that at 40. I didn't have that at 40. And if I beat my 40-year-old self up, the 61-year-old will suffer. So I have to give her grace for what she knew back then. Because now when I'm looking back, of course I wouldn't do that today. But I look back to mine the lessons so I can apply them today. Right? And so how do I not get stuck? Because I know better now. I know if I follow my soul, my intuition, it's going to lead me in the strategy that works for me right now. So the way that I do that is I make sure that I give myself enough quiet. I make sure that I'm feeding myself every day. I make sure that I surround myself with community that's going to hold me accountable for my genius and my brilliance and my greatness and the thing that only I can bring into Papa's universe. I hold myself accountable for all of those things. And so the strategies, they're just tools. If the hammer doesn't work, I need to pick up a saw. And it doesn't make sense to keep picking up the hammer when it's not working. So I understand my strategy is a tool. Use the best one that fits.
I love that. I love that. Use the best one that fits.
Yes.
And I love what you said about giving yourself grace and giving yourself space to evolve.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is how we hold other people accountable in our past for knowing what we know today.
Right.
Wait a second, I just learned this today. How can I hold Uncle Peter accountable for not knowing what I just learned today?
Absolutely. One of the things when I learned this concept, it gave me so much freedom in my life. At first, when I heard it, I dismissed it. And it was from one of my mentors. He said, at any given time, everyone is doing the best that they can. I was like, no, they could do better. They should do better. They ought to have done better. That's where I was, and I was holding them and all of those things. But as I matured, I looked at myself. I was like, oh, that was the best that you had. Now when I live from that space, this is the thing. I know that they're doing their best, but their best could mean my death, psychologically, physically, spiritually. So what I do is I recognize what they're able to give, and then I make the necessary adjustment.
Mm. Dr. Peter, I'm gonna go back to you. I don't know what degree she's hitting us with. We're getting hit with all of them.
It's all of them, all five, right? I captured something that just really resonated with me, and I want to reiterate that to everyone who's listening. Then I'll go over to Ann. Who is holding you accountable to your genius? Who is that? Because you know that you are great at some things or have a skill, a gift in some areas. Who is holding you accountable to that? Don't say nobody, I'm grown. That's not what we're talking about. That doesn't work. Who is in your circle to hold you, to uplift you towards that goal, towards that phenomenal desire? Ann McNeil, awesome Ann. Wow, this has been a conversation. This is a conversation that we're doing great with. What is your question?
This is a dialogue.
Yeah.
Yes. Imelda Wallace put a question in the chat, and I just wanted to make sure that my response was what you're looking for, Imelda. The name of the book, one of them is U Squared, and the other one is The Seed of the Soul, in case that was your question. I want to go back to something you said that jumped in my spirit. And that was how their best could be my death. And I'm going to add the death of my dream. And one of the areas that I'm experiencing in this season of my life is exactly what we're discussing, in the sense that, you know, the thinking and the people, my thinking in terms of consciousness, and the people that got me here cannot take me there in terms of having a larger vision. And I'd like to challenge each of us that's listening to be mindful that higher is calling each and every one of us, not just those of us that's on this podcast. But if you're listening to this for any reason, higher is calling you. And it does not have to be like in U Squared, he talks about a quantum leap. Come on, somebody. It doesn't have to be a quantum leap. It can just be a little step. Because I think that somebody said that, you know, the journey of 1,000, the journey is of 1,000, the journey is one step. It's the first step, taking that first step. And for the first step, for some of us, it's just showing up today. And I would encourage us and challenge us, subscribe to the YouTube and show up again and again and again and again. And as we do that, we will find, you know, those people and those thoughts and those things that need to fall off. But we have to have the persistence, if you will, to just keep moving forward. And my question to you, Dr. James, is what's next for you that persistence is calling you or pulling you to do? And how can we help support you in that? Because as we look up at the time, where did it go? We have not began the podcast yet. Okay. So I want to make sure that you share with us how people can connect with you, and if there's something that you are sharing, and then we're going to go to our annual meeting, because as we continue to have this conversation every single Saturday, we challenge everybody, and you hit the nail on the head. You called it accountability. We call it the mastermind, but being able to have the right people in your tribe, and they don't have to be people with degrees, but it's somebody that has like mind and like spirit. So I'll come back to your question. And if you can share, you know, what's calling you higher? What's that next step for you?
Yeah, really, in this season of my life, it is my life's intention to add more love into the world, one life-giving conversation at a time. And so my next is the evolution of using everything that is my being to ensure that individuals live from their soul, to invite them to live from their soul, align with their soul, and live a transformed life. So everywhere I go, I intend to depart significant love, because love wins no matter what. Love wins no matter what. I think the best way for people to join me is to I have a live every morning at 5:40 a.m. and people can get it on YouTube or on my Facebook channels. And it's literally, I've done this since February of 2020. Every morning, Monday through Friday, for 20 minutes, I go live and share what it is that Papa has given me to share for that week. So there's inspiration and transformation available.
Awesome.
It's
Awesome.
good stuff. The good stuff. I want to jump on in and bring Galen in. Galen, we hold an event every single year that I would love for you to talk about just a little bit. It is called our annual event. Do you mind teeing that up and sharing why this might be important for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, one of the themes around what we've been talking about today is this area of accountability, finding like-minded people who can encourage you. We've got so many things rooting against you and plotting against you and making things more difficult. Where do you go to find people who will speak into your vision and encourage you to play harder? And one of the places that we go each year is this annual meeting. The annual meeting is a place to do just that. It's to find people who will help you do the thing that you say you want to do. Uh, Share here. Here we go. So every year, the beginning of the year, what a great way to start your year. This coming session is going to be January 3rd and 4th in Boca Raton, where we will get together with like-minded people. You have to come with your life in writing. You have to give an account for what you did for the past year and the goals that you accomplished. And then what are your plans for the upcoming year? What are your goals? What's your strategies? And then how can people support you in holding you accountable for doing the things that you say that you're going to do? And as you can tell, we've got people of all ages, we've got families, we've got kids. And a lot of times you want to say, boy, those kids are cute. And isn't that sweet that they're doing this? Those kids are assassins, because once you tell them this is something that you're going to do, they're going to expect you to do it, and they won't let you negotiate with yourself. If you said you were going to do something and you didn't do it, you're going to have to explain to little Junior there what you mean you didn't do it because you just didn't feel like doing it. So it is a great time. I can't think of a better way or a better place to invest in yourself. And invest in encouraging you to do the things that you say that you want to do. Go to internationalmasterminders.com, click the link to make sure that you are registered to attend. This is not a conference. Ms. Ann loves to say, and I'm starting to believe her. I've been there 4 times now. I haven't gotten one conference bag. I haven't seen one keynote speaker. There really isn't a breakout. We're there focused on the goals that you have for your life and what you need in order to achieve the success that you have for yourself. So I challenge everyone to attend. I've already got my ticket. I'm going to be there. I hope to see you there as well.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Again, very lively conversation. We're getting close to that time where we got to start putting our wheels down, put our seats up right, fasten our seatbelts, and make sure that we are prepared to land this phenomenal vessel for sure. But, Catherine, I want to bring you back in. I want to ask you about your future, if you don't mind. You've done such an eloquent job of telling us about who you are, where you've come from, what your day-to-day looks like to a certain extent. But what does tomorrow look like? What are some of the goals, the persistent activities that you're going to be putting in place to accomplish those goals for your future? What's on the horizon?
Yeah. So last week I was in Florida. I was in Miami.
Mhm.
And I was a workshop facilitator for the International Association of Black Firefighters. And they have a biannual meeting. I came in to talk about PTSD. That's why I was brought in for their agenda. My agenda, God's agenda, is love. And so I ended up having the conversation of how intentional love and healthy connections is a firefighter's mental health protective gear. Mental health. And so then I dived into that. That's what my future is. My future is to use every gift, every talent, every part of my being to have multifaceted, life-giving conversations in all kinds of ways, whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast, or if it's I do what's called a self-love Queen's Adventure, where I take women who are ready to live out their soul's cry, and we have a whole weekend of transformation. And so that's what my future looks like. It's gonna happen in all kinds of ways. So I love what Galen talked in that idea of not being wedded to the strategy. I am not wedded to how. I am not but I am wedded to leaving this earth, as they say in the basketball, with nothing left on the field, nothing left on the court. I will use every ounce of me to help Papa's beloved love themselves intentionally.
Love that. Love that. Love that goal. Love that purpose. That's what I'm hearing is your purpose on this planet for sure. And it's so important that we are able to identify what our purpose is. And there's you have is your website for sure. Dr. Katherine E. James.com. Is that correct there, Katherine? Okay, awesome. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, folks, we are getting ready to land this plane. As I mentioned earlier, I want to go around the room a little bit and identify our ahas, how we can stay in touch with each other. You know, what are those things that are on the horizon for you that you want the audience to pay attention to? Let's start off with you there, Galen. What's your ahas for today, sir?
Oh my gosh, there are just so many ahas. It's hard for me to recount one in particular. I do want to share, though, a sense, because very often when you do this kind of work, you feel like you're just a lonely voice crying in the darkness. But then I run into someone like Dr. Katherine James, and she's crying in the darkness, and her voice is just a little louder than mine. And so it's so important that you find people who are on the same path that you're on. They could be a little ahead of you, therefore, someone that you might want to catch on to their coattail. They may be behind you, and you might need to drag them along the way. They might be alongside of you, struggling with the exact same questions. They don't have any more information that you do, but you can tell that they're on the same path. It is so important to find people who are on the same path, on the same journey that you're on, because that is what's going to help you with this principle of persistence. My name is Galen Bingham. I am the leadership strategist. There are just so many different ways that you can get in contact with me. The easiest way to get a hold of me is to go to my website, galenbingham.com or killglobalcoaching.com, and you'll see the things that I'm up to. Right now, I am partnering with the other Dr. James, Dr. Peter James, and we are hosting the $97 Own Your Career Challenge for 4 days. 4 days for $97. You can barely get an hour of my time for $97. Now you're going to get 4 days of me helping you own your career, and not only that, you're going to get Dr. Peter too. I don't know how $97, dude, is it too late to change that price?
We might have
$97?
we might have to, my friend. We might have to.
So go to my website, and you'll see a link there, or you can go to Dr. Peter's website. You'll see a link there as well, and take advantage of this opportunity to own your career before we come to our senses and start pricing it at something different than $97.
Good stuff there, Galen. And McNeil. This has been a phenomenal conversation overall. What are some of your ahas? How do we stay in touch with Awesome Ann?
Wow. I am still on these quotes, Catherine, you have been such a gem with all of the gems and the diamonds that you have shared with us this morning. I want to read something that I wrote in my book entitled "This Is Living," and I made a commitment to myself to share. I have about 6 books, and as I listened today, this came up for me. It says, "Today, when you face a crisis, place your confidence on the solid rock, in spite of what or who you may be facing. Your crisis will reveal where you stand. Confidence in others may be sinking sand." And when you talked about, and I'll go back to this idea of people may be holding me back, holding you back, all of us. You just reminded me, Dr. James, of how when we think of being called higher, there are people and things that come for a season and also for a reason. But it's our job in the journaling, the quiet time, and the self-reflecting that we do that allows us to be quiet, if you will, long enough to reflect. And so I wrote this book called This Is Living to just give us a way and a space to journal in this quiet time. For those of you who are interested in having a better quality of life in every area of your life, you can connect with me by texting the number 59925. And in the chat, just put the word A-N-N in the chat. Text the number 59925. And in the chat, just put the word and, that's A-N-N. Again, a phenomenal podcast, an awesome guest. And I didn't count yet, but I think I have eight pages while you were sharing. And so I just want to encourage all of our listeners, please be mindful to connect with Dr. Katherine James, because that is another way that you can answer the call as you're being called higher.
Good stuff. Good stuff there. Awesome, man. I truly appreciate it. Dr. James, thank you so much for this phenomenal dialogue. What things do you have brewing that you wanted to let the audience know about? And then how do we stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can just connect on my website, right? Just stay in touch, connecting with my website. And right now, as I am reorganizing some things, the best way to connect with me really is to follow me at that 5:40 a.m. Right now I'm in this place of service. And so as they're following and pick up the gems that work for them, and as they connect with the website, we will be updating things that they can connect with.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And Galen, put up that website one more time for us, please, if you could, just so that everybody could see there. Oh, there's the Facebook for sure. Great stuff. And then I think also the website is there as well. So folks, there's so many ways that you can connect with Dr. James. Please don't hesitate to dive on in, whether it's her website or the Facebook. Someone great to be connected with for sure. For sure. Good stuff. Hey,
Peter, one thing that they can do is join in the movement there, that link there. It's called More Love Please. And one of the things that we do, it's a $13 a month donation where it is intentionally, we come together to add more love into the world, one action at a time. So they can join first. The first ask is that they would love themselves well. That's the first ask. Just love yourself well. And we give all kinds of strategies and tools for that. But then join with $13 a month. And that way we're pouring back into the community with love, normalizing love, normalizing love. There's this thing where people say, if I say I love someone, well, you don't even know them. How do you love them? We hate people we don't know. Why can't we love people we don't know?
Love that. Love that. Love that, folks. Hey, folks, give a little love this morning and into the weekend for sure. My name is Dr. Peter A. James. Excited that you were able to join us today for another edition of Think and Grow Rich live here on YouTube every Saturday morning. We're here same time, same channel. As Galen has mentioned a little bit earlier, he and I have this phenomenal opportunity for you to identify what your next level is, but also be persistent with it as you continue to move forward. And it is called the Own Your Career Challenge, 4 days. Actually, just if you even think about it, it is only 4 hours of diving on into coaching from not just one professional and authentic coach, but 2 of them at one time during this period in September. Dive in. The website is there. Go to shiftyourmindset.com/ownyourcareer-challenge to find out the specific details about that. You desire a next level, but getting there may be a little bit of a challenge. It doesn't have to be. Let's dive on in. Hey, folks, this has been another phenomenal edition of Think and Grow Rich Live. I want to thank once again Dr. Katherine E. James for being here and being a phenomenal guest with us today, folks. We look forward to seeing you next week, same time, as I mentioned, same channel. And in the meantime, continue to think and grow rich. Take care.